Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to join you, and I hope that the Diversity MBA Publishing Summit has been all that you've hoped it to be by expectations, and you're getting to meet great people and the opportunity to hear from all different sources of folks in publishing media on a very important topic. I'm here this afternoon, my time, to talk with you about the aspect of leadership. Leadership has been something that's very active part of my life professionally. I started after college in the U.S. Army as an Army Medical Department officer, served 22 years, primarily in combat divisions, working in combat trauma surgery, supporting combat trauma surgery, and supporting care to soldiers in a combat environment. I didn't get to my first real brick and mortar facility until the end of my career as an executive officer of Tripler Regional Medical Center, and served one of the largest primary service areas of healthcare, 3,600 square miles of the Pacific Ocean, based out of Honolulu, Hawaii, all the way into Asia, and had the opportunity to travel Asia. So my military assignments have given me opportunity to travel the world. My teaching and consulting work has had me travel the world again. And the benefit of that is meeting a variety of people in a variety of settings, in a variety of cultures, and really getting to understand what drives human behavior. And this is the essence of my book, Leading with Your Upper Brain: how to create highly effective relationships, and in the power of those relationships, how you drive performance. So the book is broke out into three sections, and it contains a foundation of neuroscience work that supports how the brain actually works, and what's the difference between behavior and personality. And I'll talk a little bit about that, because I'm going to walk you through the three main elements of the book and the key teaching and learning points that you can learn and adapt and apply to yourself to become more effective as a leader, and how to improve the collaboration and unity of your work teams, including all the key elements of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but why the brain is blind to so many of those things and why that's a benefit. You know, for fun, I like to call the work that I do neurochemical bartending. If you know how to mix the right drink in somebody's head, they're going to follow you anywhere, because these neurochemicals create neuroimpulses. There's neuroelectromagnetic field that exchanges between the brain and the heart. So as we think, so we emote. As we emote, we create energy, and in that energy, we create the power to behave and choose behaviors and drive performance. So the key to this is that not only is this good for leaders in creating an impact on the six key dimensions of performance, which are productivity, how much we're doing, but more importantly, how much we're getting done, the quality of work, initiative. Today, all leaders are talking about the need of their teams to be autonomous and taking initiative, not waiting to be told what to do. They have a sense of knowing what their responsibilities are. They have a set of roles, goals, and expectations, and they execute on those expectations for performance. It's good for them as individuals, it's good for the team, and it's good for the organization as a whole. The other two key elements of performance that are science-based, and everything about the book has a science-based, evidence-based perspective to it. And it used to be that we talked about leadership as an art. Now we're talking about leadership as a science, hard science, how your brain works, how your brain responds to the behavior of other people, positively or negatively, for performance or disruption to the performance, how you build relationships, whether they're effective relationships or disruptive relationships, whether you create work cultures that are free of toxic dynamics of behavior, that people have a sense of emotional and psychological safety. So it frees the brain up to focus on the work, so that and this is a very simple way of saying it, that if we can get the brains of people working the way the brain is supposed to work, so it connects to the plan and it connects to an effective leader, then we produce high levels of outcome. So the key is, how do we get the human brain to work the way it's designed to work, so it connects to the plan, it connects with leadership, and it drives performance? That's the foundation of the book. And it came out of one simple idea that started this work for me 14 years ago. having been a leader, having had leaders, knowing there were a difference in my own affect on when I was working for an effective leader and when I worked for an ineffective leader, watching my own teams perform for me when I was being an effective leader, and when times my own sense of fear, loss, doubt, worry, anxiety, what we call lower brain affect, took over, and I became ineffective in my own behavior as leader. And then I needed to change and modify that behavior to reconnect with my team. And so they could reconnect with me in the plan, and we could go on and achieve high levels of performance outcome. So the key thought was this phrase: individual leader behavior is the single most important predictor to how a team performs. Let me say that again for you. Individual leader behavior. It's not personality. It's not the process. It's not how you design work. All those things are important, but they're all disruptive and impacted negatively if individuals can't connect in a neuroscience, neurochemical, neuroimpulse, neuropathway connection that's positive with their leader. And we call that the upper brain. So your brain is broken into two parts physiologically, and they all contain different parts of neurophysiology, neurobiology of the brain. But again, to try to put this in layman's terms and make it easy to understand and easy to apply and give everybody a vocabulary that they can share, you have your upper brain and you have your lower brain. Your upper brain is built for performance, creativity, growth, achievement, harmony, a sense of well-being. So when we talk about the idea of having a culture of well-being and creating workplace cultures of well-being, incorporating key elements of diversity, equity, inclusion in a culture, we're really talking about creating an environment in which the part of the brain that connects to those key attributes, those key thought dynamics, right, are motivated so that people can come to work engaged. And I define engagement as people being able to come to work to connect to the plan and make the plan work and produce outcomes. In those outcomes, we're talking about productivity, quality, initiative. And the final three, we're talking about how to create teamwork and how to problem solve and how to manage change. My goodness, the amount of change we've all experienced in the last 3 years, a high degree of volatility, a high degree of uncertainty, a high degree of chaos, a high degree of ambiguity, not knowing which course of action to take. That course of action one, it seems to be a good choice, but so is course of action two. And how do I know which one to choose? And then developing course of action three. So we have this ambiguity. It's not that we don't know what to do. It's we can think of things to do, but how do we choose the most effective way to behave? And in that behavior, connect to the plan and develop the plan and create good strategy and to problem solve and to reason critically and to apply the concept of practical wisdom, prior experience of knowing what worked and what didn't work. All of things can happen at a very high level of performance outcome and a very high level of well-being for people if we're in our upper brain. That's the performance brain. That's the well-being brain. But there's an opposite of that. It's a polar spectrum opposite. There's polarity and tension in our brain between these two inner brains, the upper brain built for performance and achievement, growth, well-being, and the lower brain, which is built for survival. And the lower brain wins every time in a fear dynamic, in a fear trigger, creating emotion of anxiety, worry, doubt, pessimism, negativity, a high degree of toxic brain activity goes on when our thoughts are dominated by, am I going to be okay? Am I going to survive? Can I get through this event? And when work is the main trigger and a leader at work or a team member at work is the main trigger to that lower brain affect, then performance goes down, productivity goes down, quality goes down, initiative goes down, teamwork, problem solving, how you respond to change all goes down in the lower brain. Because what happens, a person starts to focus on their survival. So instead of engagement, coming to work to thrive and to fulfill the roles, goals, and expectations for the organization, so the organization succeeds, so their team succeeds, people start coming to work to survive. And so they come to work and they'll do the minimum amount of work necessary to keep their job, stay out of trouble. They're cautious, they're watching, they're looking out for their own welfare and their own interest, because that's what the lower brain compels them to do. And you've all experienced this. This is the beauty of the concept of this book, Leading with Your Upper Brain. It's kind of like working with an Apple computer rather than a PC. It's all intuitive. Every one of you listening to me right now knows what your brain felt like, know what your emotions were like, know what you felt like when you had to get up and go to work and work for an ineffective leader, and work for an ineffective leader who allowed an ineffective, toxic team member to poison the culture of the team. And you knew what it was like when you worked for a really great leader, a highly effective leader. In our workshops, we ask this question, and so I'll pose it to you. And that is, have you had an opportunity to ever work for a really effective leader? Can you remember who that leader is? I bet this person is just going to come to your mind immediately. If you had the opportunity to work for them again, and they could called you up at the end of the summit and said, hey, I've got this new opportunity. Love you to rejoin my team. Come and be a part of our team. You'd have to give serious consideration to it. Now, I want you to start thinking of one-word attributes about why your ideal leader was your ideal, most effective leader. Now, I've done this all over the world in multiple cultures that have a tremendous amount of diversity in culture, ethnicity, religion, philosophy. And so we've proven this from a science base that regardless of all these other things, human beings are human beings, and they all know what it is that makes them gravitate to an effective leader and what it makes their lower brain tell them to run from an ineffective leader. Now, think of one-word attributes. Let me tell you a few or more of what shows up every time in our surveys when we ask these questions to teams, and we've done it all over the world. The first is trust. If you cannot trust your leader, you underperform for them. So a leader has to be trustworthy. And we remember working for leaders who we know we can trust. They're going to tell us the truth. They have integrity. They're authentic. We also remember working for an ideal leader who was kind and compassionate, and they cared about how we felt about our work and how were we doing in our work. And it wasn't just an expression of empathy. It was real compassion. Could they give us help with our work? Did we need additional resources to perform well? Was there something about the culture and dynamic of the organization that was impacting us and getting in the way of us feeling safe and having a safe, emotional safe, and sometimes physical safety work environment? Because in many cases in the area that I come from, in healthcare, it's starting to get dangerous in different places of a healthcare setting. Emergency departments, staff are being assaulted by patients. Nurses on nursing floors are being assaulted by patients. So this idea of being able to come to work for psychological and physical safety is important. And if you work for a leader who understands that and does something about that for you, then your brain responds to that leader in a different way than if you were working for a leader who just told you to tough it up and to suck it up and to drive on and leave you in the self-preservation mode of coming to work. So this dynamic of this upper brain, lower brain, and it shifts, and leaders' behaviors being the key indicator to whether I can gravitate to my upper brain or whether I need to stay hunkered down in my lower brain. These are real things. Thoughts are real things. Thoughts create real physical activity in the brain. If you knew what happens to your brain when you're thinking in a negative survival, take care of myself kind of mindset, what was happening to your brain and the damage, physical damage to your brain, the lowering of your immune system, making you more prone to diseases, increased stress dynamic that's affecting other parts of your body relative to warding off disease. If you knew how destructive negative, toxic thinking was to your mental and physical health, you'd never allow yourself to think a negative thought again. You'd do everything you could to prevent a negative thought, stay safe from that negative thought, but more importantly, stay safe from a leader and team members who are creating that toxic cesspool of disruption to your brain that is unnecessary. And so this is the first part of understanding this neurophysiology relationship to leadership, the effectiveness of leadership. So the book is divided into three parts. The first, the introduction, talks about what I've just shared with you, these neurochemical principles, these neuroscience principles, how the brain is affected positively or negatively, what happens when you're in your upper brain, what happens in your lower brain. Then we break the book out into three parts. Part one has 3 chapters, and it's based on a science equation. So is part 2, and so is part 3. So part 1 starts with the foundation of creating effective leadership. If we can't get an effective leader, we can't get performance and well-being. And so effective leadership, we have discovered scientifically, is a factor. So it's a function, right? Mathematical equation. Effective leadership is a function of self-awareness of the individual leader and their self-management. And to help people discover themselves in a sense of self-awareness and how to manage themselves in their behavior, we have an assessment tool that identifies for people what their upper brain behavior tendencies look like and what their lower brain behavior tendencies look like. And because these behaviors are real and we experience them and we see them, this is why focusing on behaviors for performance is so much more powerful and science and evidence-based than a host of psychological personality assessment tools that identify what your personality is. But there is no direct science link between personality and performance. There is a direct science link between behavior and performance. And behavior is real. You can see it, you can measure it, you can observe it, and you can change it. And that's what makes behavior science-based. There's 2 key elements to an evidentiary science-based approach to something. Can we observe it? And can we measure it? And we can do that with behavior. And so the first thing we do with leaders to create effectiveness in them as leaders in their behavior, we identify for them what their default pre-wired brain pattern is. And there's 4 of them. The first one, you tend to be fast-paced and task-focused. The second one, you tend to be faster-paced and people-focused. The third one, you tend to be a more moderate-paced, people-focused. And the fourth one, you tend to be more moderate-paced, task-focused. So 1s and 4s share focus. They're both task or process-focused, but one's faster, one's a little bit slower. 2s and 3s have some compatibility because they share the same thing. They share focus. They share the focus of people. The 2s are a little faster in that they tend to be more quick to think and conceptualize and act, where the 3 pattern tends to need time to process, to think. They're more change averse. The second pattern tends to adapt to change very quickly. So because we can identify these types of brain behavior characteristics in people, we can create a performance profile of behavior for each individual, both the leader of the team and the individuals of the team. And then we can build compatibility behaviors to bring them together. And by doing that, we break down a host of cognitive biases that get in the way of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because now people are recognizing and understanding why someone behaves the way they do. They can create empathy and compassion for the differences that they have with people in behavior. And rather than subscribe these differences to these arbitrary, subjective traits that get in the way of enhancing collaboration, unity, harmony, and kindness within teams, we now have a science base by which we can teach these behaviors, coach these behaviors, hold people accountable to these behaviors. And we not only enhance the performance dynamic of work, we enhance the quality dynamic of the workplace culture, and we make the collaboration and unity component of members of teams higher, and it's a win-win for everybody. So that's part 1. And that's very important, because if we can't create effective leadership, if we can't get leaders paying attention to who they are and their behaviors, how their behaviors affect other people, behaviors that they should keep doing and behaviors that they should stop. We have a robust coaching center within our firm, and we used data from these coaching engagements as evidence for the book. And we have a lot of case studies in the book that diagram these behaviors that are toxic and disruptive and leaders who change effectively into more effective behaviors that are less toxic and full of greater sense of compassion and understanding for their team members. And that then creates the next level of equation, which is how do you build engagement? Well, you build engagement. Remember, engagement is a phenomenon where team members come to work ready to further the interest and goals of the organization, to connect to the plan, connect to their leader, make the plan work, and drive performance. So engagement becomes a product of the culture times effective leadership. So it's another equation. It's a second equation. So part 2 of the book, we talk about engagement, we talk about culture, and then we use what you learned in part 1 in effective leadership to build into part 2. And then that cascades then to performance and well-being. Part 3 of the book is how do you get to performance and well-being? Because you can't just focus on performance without caring enough about the people who are doing it, because eventually you burn them out and that erodes performance long-term. So we're talking about long-term performance, long-term sustainability. And so part 3 of the book builds now to this performance well-being dimension. So we cascade up. We build a foundation off of effective leadership. We build the middle part of our infrastructure on engagement, which is culture times leadership effectiveness. And then we get to the crowning top of our architecture of performance and well-being by focusing on engagement and technical skill. You see, we haven't thrown the baby out with the bathwater. It's not as all behavior and no technical skill, talent, and intellect. The problem is your technical skill, talent, and intellect resides in your upper brain, right here behind your forehead in your prefrontal cortex. If you can't get into your prefrontal cortex, if you can't tap into your skill, talent, and intellect, if there are obstructions, things physically in your brain blocking your ability to get to your prefrontal cortex, now the amygdala and cortisol is a primary disruptive neurochemical, then it doesn't make any difference how well trained you are, how smart you are, where you got your degrees, how talented you are. Your skill, your talent, and intellect go to waste if you can't be in the part of the brain where you tap into those things. And so that's where now we use behavior capacity, the power of behavior through engagement to leverage and drive your technical skills, your talent, and intellect to higher levels of performance. So part 3 is the link on how to have your process dynamic, your skill, your talent, and intellect couple up to your behavior capacity. And when you have a high degree of skill, talent, and intellect, and you have a high degree of behavior capacity, you drive performance and you create a culture of well-being. It's been a pleasure joining you. I wish I had more time to share more about the book and these concepts and principles with you. I'm glad to entertain any of your questions or comments. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Michael Frisina, on my social media, and join my network there at LinkedIn. Just send me a personal email, michael.frisina, F-R-I-S-I-N-A. That's michael.frisina@gmail.com. Would love to get your questions, would love to help you in any way. The book's available on Amazon and other book outlets. Review the comments that people have posted on Amazon. I am absolutely humbled at the response this book has generated. When someone writes, "This book has changed my life," and they describe how and they mean it, there's nothing that could be more meaningful to me, more humbling to me, that the work of neuroscience in leadership, figuring out how the brain works, helping the brains of people work the way the brain was designed to work to get to performance and well-being, and then be able to publish it in a beautiful book called Leading with Your Upper Brain, and helping leaders and members of leaders teams create this robust upper brain dynamic, becoming neurochemical bartenders and making the drink of everybody's head work in such a way that they want more of their work, they enjoy their work, and they want to be with their leader and their team members. And then they make life great for everybody, regardless of your occupation and your professional area. And in mine, it's primarily been in healthcare. And when we can improve the level of team performance in healthcare, we improve the level of safety and quality outcomes in patient care for you as a patient and your loved ones as family members. So thank you. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a great rest of the summit, and Take care of yourselves, and blessings to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.